Whether certain factions of the world like it or not, we are moving away from fossil fuels. They're expensive to extract, they're getting harder to extract, and regardless of whether these folks can remove their tinfoil hats long enough to put on their Hoffman sunglasses and actually read a study, or, just look at the weather records for the last few years, renewables are cheaper and more reliable than anything fossil fuel can rustle up. But, as they keep pointing out, wind turbines don't turn when it's not windy. Hydro doesn't work when we're in our annual once-in-a-lifetime drought and the rivers and reservoirs have dried up to a crisp again. And solar panels don't generate energy after sundown. Well, not much energy. And so the only solution is, of course, to burn coal. Unless of course there was some way in which you could store that excess energy, the stuff generated at peak generation periods, and return it to the grid when demand exceeded generation. But no, there's just no way to store something so ephemeral as electricity. That's surely just a pipe dream. So, because renewables don't generate energy, at some points the only solution, according to the US government at least, is to burn coal. And carbon emissions are unimportant because the emissions are magical and disappear and don't matter at all. But Tylenol, that's a wholly different matter. That's very dangerous. And, well, simply renewables won't work. So says the US president, who is clearly knowledgeable on such things. He must be, after all, because he talks at length about them. Okay, so you want me to just provide a voiceover for the president. Why? So many complaints about hearing his whiny... Okay, sure, we can do that. And you have the transcript? Okay, cool, let's go. We'll have an economy based on wind. I never understood wind. I know windmills very much. I studied it better than anybody. I know it's expensive. They're made in China and Germany mostly. Very few made here, almost none. But they're manufactured. Tremendous, if you're into this. Tremendous fumes, gases are spewing into the atmosphere. You know we have a world right now. So the world is tiny compared to the universe, so tremendous amounts of fumes. Okay, can I just check this transcription? It doesn't seem to make any sense. These are the actual words. The president gave this as a speech. Which timeline is this again? Well, to be fair, he does say he doesn't understand wind turbines, or as his picture book called them, windmills, which is also the only accurate bit of that. Perhaps if he'd made it to the Ladybird Book of Wind Energy, he might have done better. Somewhere in the incoherent free association word game he was playing, he complained that wind energy is expensive. Someone should show him the comparison with coal. It's really not so good for coal. And that doesn't even include the secondary health impacts from coal and their impact on economic output. So it's not really any surprise that across the world renewable deployments are outpacing fossil fuels. Banks, for the most part, don't care whether an orange Gus Plus Us Muppet knockoff declares he doesn't like a thing. They care how much the math pans out on an investment, and the math isn't in favour of building new fossil fuel infrastructure, because it's very much in favour of renewables, where once you've installed the thing you pay very little for maintenance, nothing for consumables, and in return it generates energy that you sell for lots of money. But it is true you do need to store the excess energy for when there's demand that would be otherwise unmet by immediate generation. We've talked on the channel about second-use EV batteries, where the packs or individual cells are tested and then reused in stationary energy storage rolls. That looked like it was going to make up a significant proportion of the use case for EV batteries that reached the end of their useful life. at least their first one, because EVs are an incredibly demanding application for batteries, requiring very fast charging and discharging. Once they get to a point where they're not really up to that, the batteries can be retired to a nice storage farm where they can live out their days doing the much lower demand job of working in parallel with a whole bunch of other batteries. And no, this isn't like the farm your parents sent your goldfish to after it started floating on the top of the fish bowl, and no, I'm not explaining why. The only thing about that whole nice plan about putting stacks of EV batteries in a row like that, EV batteries, it turns out, last a really long time. You might think it's a long time between the day you buy a car and the day you sell it after it's racked up a few 100,000 miles, but that's just peanuts compared to the life of a battery. And honestly, our demands for energy storage have rather rapidly outpaced that as a concept. So while yes, they probably will get used that way, we're now looking for cheap and effective ways to store renewable energy, and that's where zinc-ion batteries might come in. Now, there are several kinds of zinc battery, and sometimes people refer to pretty much any of them as zinc-ion. So let's clarify what we're talking about today. There's old-school, non-rechargeable zinc cells. These have an aqueous electrolyte, like, say, lemon juice, a zinc metal or zinc alloy anode, and commonly a zinc-free cathode, something like, say, copper. Oh, that worked well. The electrons oxidizing the zinc make their way from the cathode through the circuit, and lo, the magic of electricity. There are also fancy new types of zinc battery that are reliant on the movement of zinc ions. These are called zinc intercalation batteries because the zinc ions just flit around and slip into the structure of the anode or the cathode depending on whether you're discharging or charging. They use something like a zinc-bronze anode and a cathode made of manganese oxide or good old Prussian blue analogues, which, if you've played along with our videos before, you'll know about. If you haven't, go watch them. There's a link in the down below or on the site. And then there's the kind of zinc aqueous metal batteries we're going to be talking about today. In these, you have a zinc cathode. The favoured anodes are things like stainless steel, carbon, think good old graphite, titanium, often with a coating to improve the conductivity and adhesion, or nickel. Like in zinc air batteries, the fundamental reaction involves the electrochemical plating of the zinc metal onto the anode during charging, and its stripping off or dissolution during discharging. Unfortunately, I couldn't demonstrate that with my lemon because I didn't have any zinc triflate electrolyte to fill it with. I'm sorry, I should plan ahead better. Now, your chemistry teacher, who I most definitely am not, will, I'm sure, have instilled in you the important bit of knowledge that rechargeable batteries are based on reversible reactions. In lithium-ion batteries with an NMC chemistry, those are the batteries that were traditionally used in EVs and which are now somewhat being supplanted by cobalt-free formulations for many reasons, the lithium ions and electrons are released from the graphite anode and travel to the cobalt oxide cathode. And in a zinc aqueous metal battery, the charging process is a reaction where the anode becomes zinc plated. The zinc ions gain two shiny electrons and become zinc metal and form what we'd like to hope is a nice stable crystalline structure which, when you discharge, allows the process to reverse. That means when you discharge it, that is when you're pulling power from the battery and the electrons are forced away from their nice home on the zinc metal, the anode, they go through your external circuit, in this case the entire electrical grid, which is pretty nifty. I mean, it's not exactly true, but it's pretty nifty and close enough for ad libitum cadenza, and then they find themselves back at the cathode. So far, so good. We have a nice, simple, reversible reaction, and we also have nice, cheap material to make the battery from. This, theoretically, would make them amazingly useful. Only, as is often the case, things are not quite so simple. Zinc-ion batteries have a number of really significant challenges, all of which are kinda sorta linked. Fundamentally, they're not very efficient, and they have a bunch of unfortunate side reactions that happen. Or to put it more technically, they have poor Coulombic efficiency, they have poor cyclability, and there are a number of parasitic reactions that occur. Starting at the tail end first, the water in the water-based electrolyte, the free electrons hanging around the zinc and the zinc electrode do have a tendency to produce hydrogen gas. That is, two dihydrogen monoxide molecules, two water molecules, plus a couple of spare electrons can produce a nice bit of hydrogen and some negatively charged hydrogen monoxide. This is suboptimal because hydrogen sods off out of the battery or else causes the battery to swell. The water that was in the electrolyte is now no longer water, and the electrolyte starts to dry out. It also changes the pH around that bit of the battery, and as a sucky negative bonus, that charge that you put into the battery and wanted to get back out, it's gone into an obnoxious side reaction. Zinc, left to its own devices, like, when the battery is sat on a shelf notionally storing energy, also likes to react with water, which slowly chemically consumes the zinc and effectively reduces the amount of zinc available in the battery for storing energy. Also, obnoxiously, both of these reactions result in the formation of a dense insoluble layer of zinc oxide or zinc hydroxide on the surface of electrodes, and guess what that does? Yeah, it makes the battery suck more.
The Hoover dirt searcher. It beats as it sweeps, as it cleans.
No, that's the wrong kind of sucking. And then we get to the next problem, which is one familiar to anyone who's watched this channel and actually what prompted us to look at this topic. So as the cruft builds up and as less and less of the electrode is accessible to the electrolyte and taking part in the redox reaction, so dendrites can form, and dendrites can cause a short circuit and prematurely kill a battery. Dendrites, for those who don't remember, are pokey little sods, and they can work their way through the insulating layers because they are often sharp, but they also have other negative impacts. We'll drop a link into one of our previous videos because I don't think you want me to rehash this topic all over again, since we did it a few weeks ago. So as with our previous battery science video, where the breakthrough is in understanding and where we're at is preparing to leverage that, this is a thing that we know now that will help us improve the function of these batteries. And this is similar to that previous video in that way, because although there has already been a lot of work attempting to reduce the formation of zinc dendrites and mitigate the damage that they can do, this study delves deep into how they form and also how that relates to the structure of electrodes. Ma et al. Used a very similar method, a synchrotron-based X-ray diffraction platform. Again, if this sounds like Greek to you, then go check out the video linked in the down below or on our website. That video has a lot more explanation of this process. Unless you're Greek, and it sounds like Greek, in which case go right ahead and keep on watching. And that also allowed them to see in great detail which structures were associated with the formation of dendrites and how those dendrites formed. It turns out that there were two super important things they discovered. The structure of zinc deposition is hugely significant in the formation of dendrites, and the patterns of deposition are strongly linked to current density at the electrode. What's even more interesting though is that unlike lithium-ion batteries, which research has eventually found that while they occasionally need a little bit of treat it like you stole it for reducing formation of dendrites, and indeed helping to break them down, mostly they like low current for reduced dendrite formation. But it turns out that zinc electrodes are even more picky. Fundamentally, this ends up being almost the entire opposite of what we knew before. While we usually think that charging batteries slowly, that is, at a low current, is better to prevent the formation of damaging dendrites, this research shows that for zinc metal batteries, the opposite is true. Using a high current density to deposit zinc results in a flat, dense layer of zinc where the crystals are neatly aligned with what's termed the 002 planes parallel to the electrode. A plane, in this case, is an imaginary flat surface that slices through the nice, neat, orderly, well, hopefully, 3D lattice of atoms that makes up a crystal. In this case, the sheet of atoms within the zinc metal. Think of it like slicing a loaf of bread. You can slice it horizontally, vertically, or at an angle. Though why you would want to do that with a loaf of... Anyhow, each type of slice is a different plane. The 002 specifically refers to a horizontal slice through the zinc crystal that cuts through a specific layer of atoms, and when all these flat planes align parallel to the electrode surface, it creates a smooth, dense layer instead of one that's prone to spiky dendrites. This texture is highly desirable. No, not like that. Because it's resistant to corrosion, and most importantly, it doesn't form dendrites. However, if you charge the battery using a low current density, you get a porous, messy structure that encourages dendrite formation, and which then causes batteries to fail quickly. Well, more accurately, if you do that right from the start. Once the layer of zinc is thick enough and formed in the 002 texture, then later deposition can be continued at much lower current without ruining the cell. And, excitingly, a random-oriented coating that formed under low current conditions can be corrected back to the nice, neat 002 formation by applying a much higher current. The researchers propose what they call an evolutionary orientation selection mechanism. Imagine a bunch of tiny little hexagonal plates all landing on the surface, and they're landing at different angles. The plates that lie flat can spread out quickly sideways, and at high current, that growth sideways is so fast that those flat plates simply outgrow and bury any plates that are tilted or standing up, resulting in a uniform textured layer. At low current, the growth is slower, so the misaligned plates have time to keep growing upwards. And these uneven and irregular areas where dendrites get a toehold, and that's where they start growing. The takeaway is a new set of guidelines. Start charging zinc batteries with a high current to establish a good foundation, and avoid prolonged low current charging and discharging, which is what's actually harmful. Which brings us around to energy storage. If you're building out a large-scale energy storage project, zinc is tempting for its cheapness, and this research really underscores how incredibly useful it is for doing the job of shunting extra power into the grid rapidly, when it's needed. Grids need to stick at their 50 to 60 Hz frequency, depending on where you are in the world, and when demand suddenly spikes, it can change that frequency. Zinc is a great choice to get power into the grid fast. It also helps with smoothing out sudden spikes from energy generation. That's something that's much more common with renewables than it was with fossil fuels, except when everyone's kettle turned off. But you also want something else, because yes, you want to be able to pour energy into the grid quickly, but you also need long-duration energy storage if you're going to have an entirely renewable grid. And that remains one of zinc's weak points. So while we will probably see this chemistry making its way into our storage system, it is going to need a friend to play with. Whether that friend will be lithium ion or lithium ion, Fe ion, or more likely sodium based, I don't know. But it's gonna be exciting to see. Thanks for joining us today. And if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them in our Discord room, on our Patreon page, down below, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon or Blue Sky. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They're part of the massive community of supporters who make this channel possible, helping us through Patreon and YouTube, covering our bills, paying our team, and helping us to remain 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here and mispronounced horribly by me, just follow the links below. We've got options across a range of different price points from $1.50 US a month. A massive welcome to our newest supporters: Mwesi, Lay Magyar, MX Flounder, Nitmer, Thrill Nelly, Hernan Geraldo, Christopher Bloodworth, Eric Rouvier, Ronnie E. Bickers Jr., Brett Mason, George Pinney, Mega XLR, Robert Coghill, Peter Brodke, Gary Wood, Dessa Bird Traveller, Tim van der Loog, Mike Clark, Kyle Olin, Rob Hutchinson, Tony Leidig, Chris Nichols, Tempest, Adrian Atwater, Doug Lloyd, Mitch Rassner, and Brad. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your moment of fame, and you can even gift membership to someone else. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations. And we even have an old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at, for the time being, addressed below. You'll also find links to our swag store, and if you're someone who has to shop on Amazon, please consider using our affiliate link so we get the commission, not Jeff Bezos. So we can continue to focus on making our content even better and reduce burnout, we're being a little freer with our release days, but plan on dropping new content every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday on our main channel, plus something on Sunday over on TE Take 2. If you want more, the algorithm that hates us thinks you should be watching this video, but this video is the one we'd like you to check out. Be kind, be awesome, be intentional, and don't forget to resist. Keep evolving!